Hi, welcome to a new update of Sanctus Library. We are going to see all the new assets and features in the new update. One of the more important parts of this update is the new material editor that will let you add details and all sorts of damage. You can also use PBR materials, so basically you can start with wherever you want and start adding like layers of details and damages and stuff on top of them, and you can always bake the result. This material editor comes with a lot of new assets. We are going to see some of them and create some materials. There are also some new materials we are going to see, some geometry node assets. There was a lot of teasing because there was a water category in the materials, but no water on it, so we took care of that. There are also some core changes to the add-on. We have a new baking system. The decals can now be baked along with the material. We also have a new feature that you can add local folders as categories in the decal panel, so you can access them easily. Okay, there's a lot to cover, so let's get started. Okay, let's start with the material editor. We are going to go to the shading tab, and we can see that now in the Sanctus tab we have the material baking. We are going to see that later. We have a new section here, different asset types, masks, shaders, smart models, and texture models. Okay, let's start with the basics. As you can see, most materials from Sanctus Library, when we apply them, have some bake output here. This is basically what's connected to the principal shader inside the material. As you can see, the color here, it's also exposed. Roughness, same thing. The normal, using a custom node to convert it from object to tangent for baking. And also the displacement, this is what we connect to the material output, but the information that we need to bake is the height, so it's exposed here. Using this as a base, I created this new material editor that can take what we already have and add new things to it. For example, okay, let's create a new material here. I will use a blank base. It's a super simple material, just to explain how this works. It's basically a principal BSDF, but with the sockets exposed here. Then we can add the first layer. I'm going to the smart models here, and I will use a dirt normal, and I will pick one of the models. I add this, select both, and click connect. As you can see, it adds dirt on top of the object. It's using a normal mask based on the normal of the object, of the faces. And we have all kinds of adjustments here to change it, the distance. All the parameters are explained. If you click the documentation button of the asset, you will see the description. At any point, you can change the parameters of any of the layers. For example, I want to change the color of the material, if it's metallic, or the roughness. Also, at any point, you can bake the output of any layer. For example, I can change and see how it was before this layer. And here I see how it changed. And let's say I want to bake this. I right click, select socket for baking. I add them. Now I will go to the material baking. I will do a very low resolution bake just to demonstrate. I hit bake. And now I can click this button here. And I have the baked version of the material. I can now use this as a base if I want, because as you add layers, it can get a bit slower, and eventually you can hit a limit and the object will render black completely. So at that point, you have to go to the previous layer and bake it. I will remove this. And let's say I want to add some, I don't know, edge wear. In this case, when you have a PBR material, you have to connect it manually. Here, metallic, roughness, and the normal directly. Here we have two methods. I think this one works better for this kind of object. We have the distance, the blending, and many other parameters. Here we can choose if the masked areas are replaced in color, metallic, roughness. Let's say I don't want to replace the color, for example. It will have the same color. It's replacing the roughness. That's why we see that. Again, you can always bake this or keep adding, for example, moss. Select, connect, and now we have moss using an ambient occlusion based mask. Let's do something different to show you a bit some other things. I will add a shader base, in this case maybe metallic base. This is a simple material to be used as a metal base. At any point, we can select all the layers and click connect, and they will be connected in order. So if we have, for example, these orders like this, we select everything, connect again, and they will be changed. The order is important because they work as layers on top of the previous layer. So here, for example, the border is replacing the moss, and it's not really what we want, so we will change it back. Select them, connect. There are also some modules that have inputs for masks here. You can plug an image texture if you want, or you can use one of the masks. I will use, in this case, we are replacing the moss that is using this kind of mask. I will use it with a normal mask. I add this. I will plug this here and use a replace. And you can see that now it's using this mask to determine where the moss will go. This is a mask based on the normals of the faces. I'm using the positive Z axis. And here we have a blending. And the distance. There's also a scale for the noise. All the parameters from the noise. And also this changes the way the normal works. For example, in this case it's dynamic, so if I rotate the object, the mouse will also adapt. If it's fixed to the object, it will use the object orientation for the mask. Let's do another quick material here to explain something. I will use, in this case, a synthetic base. So we start here, and I wanted to explain the texture models. This affect only the normal. The bases always have some changes that you can play with. Here we have variations with a texture, variations in the hue. This is very sensitive, so be careful. the saturation, and the value of the color. So we will try some. Select those, connect. Here we have some sort of leather texture or skin. As you can see, the normals are affected there. Let's try some other cones. You can increase the bump here, change the radius, shapes, and change the parameters. And you can still add other details to it. There's always a strength in the mask if you want to make the effect a bit more subtle. And the mask also has a blend. That's the hardness of the mask. You can increase the distance a bit. The only local is, since this is based on ambient occlusion, if you have another object close to it. In this case, it's using only local, so it won't be affected by it. But if you change this, there will be also dirt on the parts of the object that are close to other objects. Remember, you can hit a limit. For example, if you start with a procedural material, for example, okay, we start with this, and we start adding other layers. Let's try another heavy one. I think that this one. Okay, that's basically the limit. You can see in the window. Out of SVM stack space, okay. That means we hit the limit, and we can basically bake here and use the bake to start adding layers again. You can do that as many times as you want. There's nothing to do there because it's a cycles limit, and that can be changed. For now, the editor works only with these 4 maps: color, metallic, roughness, and normal. I will probably add later emission and alpha, and we will see how that goes. But I wanted to make it a bit more simple at the start. Don't worry if the material is missing one of the sockets, default value will be assigned. So for example, in this case, connect, the metallic is missing, but it will use 0 for the metallic. In the case of the normal, it will use 0.5, 0.5, and 1, so the values will be correct. And here we can see the new scratches there. Another possibility is that the object has more sockets here. So what we can do is connect them. But in the final stage, we can use the alpha bake as our alpha for the final material. For example, we'll go to the baking. I will add, let's clear this. It's a previous bake. I will add from this, the final layer, all the maps, and from here I will select the alpha. I will change this to solid view, and I will do again a low resolution for speed, bake. And now I can use this. And as you can see, the alpha is also baked. Again, you can start from this if you want. I think that covers pretty much what the editor can do, and we will be probably making more guides and tutorials in the future. Let's see some of the new materials. One of the things that many people said is that we had a water category of materials with no water, so here they are, finally. We will talk a bit about them because to make them look good, you have to have a few things in mind. This is just an example. Of course, like everything in 3D, if you zoom out, it has nothing to do with the original render. But I used some photo scans free from different websites, and I added a huge mass of water here. We have, in this case, I'm using bump, but also displacement. In some cases, you can get away with just the bump. You can also use the displacement as bump. Here you have the option at the end of the active material properties, bump only. As you can see, depending on what you're doing, that works too. As you can see, some foam will form close to other objects. You can change the values here. I will start a new scene and show you a bit how to get the best out of these materials. First, I will scale this object, scale on X and Y, apply the scale. I will use an HDRI that is sky only and it has no ground. I will add subdivision surface, adaptive subdivision, simple. And you can use also a sun lamp. Let's give it an angle there. At any point, you can change also the density, because that depends on the size of the object. The light that goes through the water, for example, if I set this, you will see that less light goes inside. There's also the intensity of the caustics. This is too much. And everything is animated if you render the frames. There's also small details, for example, in the water. You can see like particles of foam there, the caustics. And objects will also add shadows, for example. As you can see there, maybe, I'm not sure if you can see it there. That changes if the sun has another direction. You can later play with the parameters. There's also some presets. In general, they work well, but you will have probably to change a bit the parameters depending on the size of the object and the conditions of the scene. This is basically the floor that I have at my home. The pattern changes the scale, simple, 1, 3. The amount of tiles per square, basically, 5, 2, 1. Some controls for the tiles, the tile colors, the frame can be changed. There's also a control for the mortar there. And the control for the wood. Here are some basic This is a basic warm metal. Apply. They are simple and way faster than most materials here. They are not as detailed and they are not using, for example, dust or things like that. But in some cases, when you need something simple and fast, you can use those. We have some new rust materials. This one uses ambient occlusion. Another version. We have also ones using normal. The rust is a new texture I did for the material asset, and I think it looks really well. And there's also rust peeling. Here you have the mask with the distance. And lastly, we have some basic stones, also with the same concept of making them more simple and not that heavy. Okay, let's see some of the Geometry Nodes assets. In effects, we'll find two new assets. This is the Holo tool. And you select the object. I'm using Eevee and Bloom. And also I changed the background a bit for contrast. Select the object, apply to mesh. And if you let the timeline play, you will see the animation also. You have a lot of parameters to play with, the rotation, density, the position of the projector, and things that you can try your own. You can change the color. Let's try another one. You can manually change a bit the rotation, change a bit the speed. That way they behave differently or start in different points. We also have the screen. This changes objects into screens. Let's try it. Screens will be the same size unless you change it, and the object will adapt to it. I didn't apply the scale here. And again, you can change different things. Change the wire radius if this is too much. Since we have this object here, I will show you another asset in the tools category, in the stack tool. We will select everything, move to a new collection. I will hide that collection. And in another, not in the same one, in another collection or the same collection, I will add this new tool. Let's make this like this. Okay. Select a collection in the modifiers tab because I cannot expose this in the addons UI. So here we select the instances to use. I will use objects. And as you can see, what it does is to stack them using the object's measures. In this case, I have a little gap because I have it at separation with a little bit more than one. You can change the axis. In this case, it's using the third axis, the Z-axis. We can change it to Y or X. You can change the count. There's always a seed. And there's also another thing that you can do with this is to create a curve. I will edit that curve and draw a new one. I will remove those vertices and create something different. Okay, we select back the tool and we will add the target curve here. And we will say follow curve instead. So basically they will still be stacked by their Z-axis, but following this curve. The order can be random or in order. That will be the index of the collection. That will repeat if needed. You can also change the axis and they will use different axes to follow the curve. For example, their Y-axis or the X-axis. We have a new bags generator. You select the object, add to mesh. You will see they are animated. You have the controls for the wing speeds. If you have some fireflies, also a factor. There's the overall scale. You also have the size of the bugs here. There's also a seed. If you have multiple lights, you will change that so they are different. Apply, change seed. If they are too dark, you can change the body color, make them more easy to see. There's also the light, if you want to play with that. And the amount of fireflies. There's also the simplify, if you don't want the wings or think it's a bit distracting or whatever. And you can change the size of the bugs. You have the distance. They can fly further away from the object. There's also a speed control, speed variation. Some will fly faster than others. This changes between two types of flight. One is more like orbiting and the other is more chaotic. And the last geometry node asset is the water block. I will add new. This also has animation. I will change a bit like we did with the material. This needs, let's change shading just to see how this affects this material world. And we will change this. Also, it's important what you have behind and around it. I will increase this. And that is here is because there's a limit, a floor basically. You can add a ground or you can increase the height. and that will go away. For example, water level. But for now, we will leave it at 2, just to show how it works. One of the things here is that you cannot control volume shaders from geometry nodes. So in this case, they are separated. You have all the controls for the shape, basically, the floating objects that we will see in a moment. And the material, you have to select the object, go to Material tab, Active Material Properties, and you will see the properties for the actual material. We have the density of the volume, the bump, and basically everything that is related to the material. And for example, here you can have the foam particles. They will also animate. You have the animated caustics also. Let's increase a bit the density here. And I will use now, for this example, Susan head. I will make it smaller. And the important thing to know is that the objects that we add here, their position on X and Y will be respect, but not the position in the Z axis, because I will use that to make them float here. So for example, let's add another object, sphere. And from the top view, I will change this here, and this is maybe there. Let's move them both to a new collection, float. And let's hide that collection, select our cube, floating collection, float. Now if you play the animation, they will also be animated. As you can see, Susan is a bit out of the water. We can change the floating level. And here you have controls for the animation of the floating. You have up and down, a bit like the balancing to the sides, and the rotation, they will slowly rotate. You will see that some foam forms around those objects. And for example, you can also have another object that is not floating, let's say part of, I don't know, a structure or something. Add a color to this, because otherwise it will be hard to spot the foam. And select the cube. Here you have a second collection for only foam. Let's move this to somewhere. Collection. And as you can see, you have foam there, and the object will be fixed. The controls for the foam are in the material, so you can see that change the color, make it stronger or more subtle. There's also a little texture that you can see for the bubbles, and you can change there. At any point, you can change the density, the color of the water, the strength of the caustics. And the light that goes through the water. If you increase the size of this, let's say 10 meters, the resolution will not be enough to have the same kind of waves, so it will be a bit like rounded there. You have to increase the vertices, but you will also have it will be also become more heavy. Let's say we multiply this by 5. So we need like 250 to have a bit the same kind of waves. You can also control the waves height. If they are too high, you can maybe 0.7. And well, in real time, this will be a bit too much, but if you render it, it will be fine. You also have subdivisions here. It's using in render, but maybe it's not necessary. You can leave it at 1. And you can change the viewport subdivision to 0, so you can have something a bit more fast, and in the renders it will look better. There's a lot of new things for the decals too. We have in preferences, we can now add local folders as categories in our decal panel. To do so, we go to decals in the preferences of the addon, add directory. We click this button. We navigate to the folder we want. And we click accept. Any change that you do here needs to reload the library. That's why you get this text here. So now if I click reload, I will see my new folder or my new category here with the content. We can change the name also. And click reload. Now the name changed. And I can use directly the decals from here. They will respect the alpha if the images are PNG, for example, so you can play with that. The damage of the decals was completely reworked, and it's more complete now. We have a new discoloration effect. Directional damage is the one we had before, so we can add some. It's like it goes on a direction. You can rotate it like it was teared apart. Here is a control for the texture scale. We'll change that. Then we have a border damage. It will start damaging the decal from the border. You can change the scale of the texture. And it also has some little cracks close to the damage. That can be controlled here, the distance of them. Then we have holes damage. And this we already had. It's like the paper shows in the damage there. You can remove it completely if you want. Maybe it's a plastic instead of a paper, and you can change the color. Then there's a global damage to control all the damage from one place. You can change the seed or the scale. There's also bump. We can add wrinkles. As you can see there, like there's air, or it was badly placed. We can exaggerate the multiplier to see it better. Also texture. The interesting part is that if you like the damage that you did to the decal, but you want to change the image, you can select another one and click swap image, and the damage will be maintained. The same thing if you want to change the position, you can click reposition decal, and it will keep the damage too. There's a new button here. I will show you in a moment what it does. This was to fix an issue. For example, if we add a decal here on a low poly object, and I increase the projection distance so it reaches the surface there. You can see here the projection has to surpass the surface. As you can see here, the shading is different. You can see the light. That's because the normals are incorrect. In this case, only in low poly objects. If there's a bevel here and the object has auto smooth, this won't happen. We will see it in a moment. And all we have to do is click this button, and the normals will not be edited, and the shading will be correct. As you can see in this case, as I told you, it's only when the object is low poly and there's a sharp edge on the decal. And another thing is that the decals, before we had to bake them apart from the material and then combine them manually. That was quite complicated. So now with the new baking system, they are automated, and you just click a checkbox and they will be baked along with the object's material. So now we are going to see how the new baking system works, how to bake decals, materials, and multi-slot materials. Okay, the new baking system, you can find it in the shader editor. In the panel you have material baking. We'll do a very simple material bake to see how fast this can be and how simple. And then we will go in deep and learn about all alternatives, settings, and everything else. First, I will assign a material to the object. I will right-click the group, select my sockets for baking. I will select everything. Okay. I see everything is here. I will make a 2K resolution baking. Bake. While baking, the button will change to baking, and once it's finished, it will go back to bake, and you will see the result here. You can just click this button, and now this is the procedural material, and this is the baked one. Okay, now we will go in deep and see everything about the parameters and different situations. First, the panel here. On top, we have the basic settings, the resolution of the image that we are going to bake. The margin, you can leave it at auto margin or unclick and select a value in pixels. You have override textures. What it does is, if I change, let's say, a parameter here, color to red, and I want to rebake this, I don't have to do anything else than that. I will change this to solid mode. Once I change this, I can just bake again. In this case, I only changed the color, so the only affected map is this one. I can, for example, disable this and bake again. Since I have my override textures enabled, the map has been replaced, and I don't even have to change this. It's already here. So the color has changed. It's important, if you are going to still bake things, or you are not sure, you can leave this here, because if I remove it, I don't have the source to bake the material anymore, the procedural. So if I remove this, you can see the path is not no longer there. So you have to clear the bake if you want, but I will undo that. The clear button will just remove everything here to set up a new baking process or job. I will try to explain a bit the concept here so you can understand better how this works. We have sockets. These sockets are basically what we have connected to the last step on a procedure on a principal BSDF here. So the same color that goes in goes out for baking. Same for all the maps. And we also have, this will convert from object space to tangent space just for baking. So this is basically object space normal and tangent space normal. And we use that information to create the maps. So let's clear this. When we right-click this and select the sockets for bake, it's a quick way to create those maps. So if you can see, it detects color bake name as a base color map, metallic as a metallic map, and so on. So if we select, they will create that. Those maps can have any content. If I remove this, I can add a socket, for example, from another node. I don't know, a color ramp, whatever. Add socket. I have to have the node selected. And I will use one of the sockets here. So now, in this case, it's just a gray color, but we can do it as an example. For example, I will change this to have some color. And again, I will disable this because I don't want to spare time on those. Bake, and as you can see, I have the color now is the one that we baked from this output there. It's a bit more strong, and since it's a solid color, everything is red. Let's clear this again and see that we can create new maps, empty maps. With one of the types. For example, I want to bake a color map, a metallic map, a roughness map, and a normal map. Okay, they will be empty. Now, if I select any group node or node, I can add the socket to the corresponding map. So my color map will have the color bake. I could use the metallic, but it will be not correct in this case, but I can use any socket. Here you will have the map type. You can change it. Maybe you want to use that as an emission now. So you change it to emission. And now the color is free. So you could add another one with the color. For example, you cannot have two maps with the same type, of course. It will say overlapping map types. There's also the samples for each type of map that you want to use. And there's also other map type. That's the only one that you can have multiple ones, because maybe you want to bake an ambient occlusion or whatever. For example, other, I will call it ambient occlusion, and I will select the output of this, and now it will be baked. In this case, the object is not very helpful, but as you can see, if we bake, we will have that ambient occlusion there. Let's try this. I'll use a lower resolution to go a bit faster. I did this with one sample just to test it, but as you can see, the map was baked and You can see the content, the ambient occlusion. In the results, you can always click them to check the maps. There's also an order here to sort by name or date of the bake. If I don't click the override, I will have a new set of bakes. You can always instantiate single maps if you want to use them. For example, I can use the ambient occlusion here. The baking is linked to the object. If I have another object, there will be nothing here. If we go back, we have everything there. If for some reason you need these maps or you want them in another object, you go to that object and you unclick this button. This is to show only local sets. This is global. You have every bake in every object of the blend file, and you can use them here if you want. There's also a button to batch save all the textures. Now that we understand a bit the concept here, I will make a bake with a multi-slot material. Okay, let's say we want to bake this. It's quite simple too. Once you understand how this works, I will select one of the two, doesn't matter, and we'll add all the maps. This will create the maps here quickly. Then I will change to the other slot and I will see the new add socket here. Remember, this has to be selected, the object also. For the base color, I will add the color of this other slot. For the metallic, roughness, and normally I will do the same. I will change the resolution and bake. Okay, here we have our result. In this case, in this object, we have two slots. I will clear this. My bakes are still there. I will remove one of the slots. And now I can replace this one. A new material. Okay. Bring this. And that's the baked version with multiple slots. And the last thing we are going to see is how to bake the decals. Okay, so we select the object. We add the baking sockets. And in this case, these are the maps that are going to bake. When the object has decals applied to it, you will see a new checkbox here. If you have this active, the decals will also bake with the material. This is only necessary if you're going to use this outside Blender. Otherwise, you can have the decals there, or you're going to maybe animate the object and you want the decals to be animated with it. I will bake this. And as you can see in the result, when we click, we have also the decal baked. Now we can use this. And if we hide our decals, we can still see the baked image there. A thing that happened is that your material doesn't have an emission map, but your decal has, for example. All we have to do is to add a new empty map emission. So the emission map will be baked. So since the bake decals is enabled, it will bake, even if this doesn't have a socket there. So let's try this. Once it's baked, we will see that we have all the different maps, and we also have an emission that has the emission for the object. We add this. the emission, you can plug it here. And set the strength to 1. And we have the baked. We hide this. Here the resolution is a bit low for the decal because we are using 2K, but in the entire cube, so the area for the decal is maybe 200 pixels or something like that. Depending on the distance that you will show the decal, it will be enough. If you're going to use it inside Blender, it's maybe better to keep it as a decal because in this area you have the full resolution of the image. In order to achieve this on an entire cube, you maybe have to bake it like 4K or maybe even more, and maybe it's not worth it. So depending on what you're doing, you have different options. Okay, I think that covers everything new in the add-on. Thanks for watching and see you in the next update.